called to order.
Prior to the prayer, I did want to make a comment on Wednesday. Hoover football team traveled to Auburn and competed in the 7A championship, which will make their third in a row. But the biggest part of that is we had two players to be injured in that. Alex Elam that injured his spleen that was removed, from my understanding. He was released on Sunday. He's a trooper. One of the first things he said after the surgery, he said he won't be able to return to school, and correct me if I'm wrong, for 2 or 4 weeks. And he said, well, hey, I got finals. So he has a 4-point, if I'm not mistaken. Another gentleman by the name of Jack Hutchinson, starting quarterback, had surgery today on his rotator cuff. So I don't know if he was released or not, but it went successfully. It went well. But it does show that we have not just athletes, but student athletes focus on the overall goal. So just keep them in your prayers and families as well.
So at this time, if you choose to do so, please join me in a moment of silent prayer. Thank you.
Now, if we could stand for a pledge of allegiance. Salute and pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm glad to see a full house tonight. I feel very, very sad with all the SROs in the background up there. So thank you all a lot for being here tonight. You have before you the agenda for today's board meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We will now have a recognition time. Green.
Tonight we have a special recognition. I know that when you came in, you could not help but notice the beautiful Christmas decorations, specifically the Christmas tree. If you took a minute to walk over there, you would have seen that all of the ornaments on the tree have words on them in different languages, in fact, and they all say peace on earth in different languages. We have that tree and those decorations because of Crossroads School, and I'd like to ask Ms. Whitney and Ms. Stewart to come up and be recognized. Crossroads does a community service project every year, and this year they called to ask if part of that service project could be to decorate central office. They feel like that, they would be a good place to showcase their art. So they chose a theme. They went through several different ideas until they came up with this one. When they came over, I think we had about 8 boys, is that what it was? 8 boys and Dumbo, the dog, and a ladder and a whole lot of energy and pretty good appetites, I might add. And they spent a long time, several hours, making sure everything was just right. They hung the ornaments, they rehung the ornaments, they moved the ornaments, they talked about the ornaments. And in that time, I really got to see the power of this community service. They talked a long time about why they chose what they did and why it was important and how they got their information and all of the research involved. So I wanted to present this certificate of recognition and of appreciation to Principal Anna Whitney and to her counselor, Catherine Stewart, for spearheading this. There were many other community projects that they did. This was just happened to be one, but it certainly took on new meaning, and I want them to give you a little bit more insight as to why the students chose the theme Peace on Earth.
Ms. Green just asked me to give you guys a little bit more information about what the tree symbolizes, but we wanted to do something to give back to the Board of Education for the support that you give to our school. And we have developed a tradition at our school for the past 4 or 5 years now that we do 2 full days of community service in the New Beginnings program and in the Second Chance program. So this was a piece of the New Beginnings program, and we tried to find a way to represent our entire district coming together. And the best way that we could figure out to do that is to wish everyone peace on earth in the 53 different languages that are represented in our district. And when you look at the ornaments, if you take a minute, our kids handmade every single ornament on that tree. We came over with about close to 60. We made some duplicates. I think we actually hung 50 because I think we broke about 10 in the process. I mean, I was like, y'all quit breaking the ornaments, and then I dropped one. So anyway, it's just something to give back to the board for what you guys do for us, and we hope to make it a tradition.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have the minutes from the regular board meeting of November 3rd, 2014, and the called board meeting of November 14, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next is the personnel report. Any questions for Ms. Field?
The only question that I have is revolving around busing. I know we have had some emails that go out. It seems like every time we have a personnel report, we have bus drivers that come and go. So, you know about the stability of that or not?
They recently, Mr. Gaston and Mr. Nickram sent some messages out to parents and community about a job fair opportunity, and I think Mr. Nickram said there were about 70 that attended. You know, of course, some probably heard the information and said it's definitely not for them, but then out of that, he has at least 7 potential candidates, one that's already gone to start the process and start the testing. So that's pretty good based on the fact that that's 7 that we didn't have prior to this.
Any other questions for Ms. Field regarding the personnel report? If not, do I have a motion to approve the personnel report?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The personnel report is approved.
Oh, ho, ho, ho.
We have a special-
Merry Christmas! I'm making my list and I'm checking it twice. I came to find out who's being naughty or nice. I think I'm in the right place. A lot of nice folks in here, I hear. Except maybe Mr. Cooper. I just want you to know you still got time. Straighten up and fly right.
Santa trying to
Be on the good list with all the rest of these guys. Merry Christmas to you.
And you tonight.
That's all correct. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, sir. Merry Christmas. A card. You gotta be good. Gotta be good. There's still time. Still time. Merry Christmas, guys. You all are just right up at the top of my good list. I just want you to know that. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. Does everybody want candy cane? Merry Christmas. You can put that in your notes. Yes, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Good to see you. Don't miss anybody. Merry Christmas.
That's the important thing.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Oh, jingle bells. Jingle all the way.
Mom didn't get his pictures. So.
I can do that. I know. Are you being good? Are you being really good? I have to check. Don't let me miss anybody. Oh, did you get one? Did you get one? You're welcome. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle. You're quite welcome. I gotta get down here and check, make sure everybody's on the good list. Oh, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Are the elves ready, sir?
Merry Christmas. Are you on the good list?
Right, how are the elves? Are the elves
The
ready?
elves are they hard at work. They are hard at work as I speak. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Merry Christmas. Oh, what fun it is.
Yeah.
Jingle all the way. You guys wishing I'd hurry up. Merry Christmas.
He does for everything.
That's what I was Welcome. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas. No, I check my notes. Merry
That is good stuff. That is good stuff.
Yes. Carry on, guys. Carry on by all means. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We really wanted to make sure that since it's Mr. Craig's last board meeting, we wanted to do something very memorable for him. So you won't forget us.
I'm gone now.
Perfect. Okay, the business items are before you. Any questions for Ms. Ante?
We're going to be able to keep up the financial good news.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the business actions?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The business actions are approved. Next, we have a request to designate certain items as obsolete. Any questions for Ms. Ante on this line item?
Ken, you getting all new TVs?
We're doing away with those.
Okay.
Any questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve this list of obsolete items?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The list of obsolete items is approved. You now must consider a proposed list of textbook committee members. Any questions for Dr. Adams? Is she here?
She is not, but we can answer questions if you have any.
Okay, Dr. Dotson, thank you.
Is this related to the science curriculum or just our at-large curriculum?
It's reading,
Reading?
making adjustments to the reading materials for elementary in particular.
Any questions for Dr. Dodson? If not, do I have a motion to approve these committee members?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The textbook committee is approved. Mr. Craig, is there any information reports tonight?
Mr. Sweeney and I talked about an update regarding information to the federal court and also the where we are in the process for the rezone. Is now the time the board would like to do
Sure.
that?
Take your microphone, guys. Thank you.
Before addressing that important topic, let me just mention a report of information that our board president wears a multitude of hats and has just assumed a new overarching responsibility to be a grandmother.
Oh, I know.
And
Thank you.
our board president was one happy lady last week when she informed all of us of this development, and I'm so pleased that your
Thank
daughter and your son-in-law and your new grandbaby are doing so well.
The fourth quarter of the Iron Bowl. My husband, I barely got him to the hospital in time.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
With regard to the rezoning and the Justice Department, we submitted, thanks to the hard work of Andy Craig and his staff, all of the requested data that the Justice Department had requested of us on November 4. On that same day, Natanya Singleton with the Justice Department acknowledged that she had received all of the information that she had requested and would proceed with a review of that information. That was on November 4th and November 5th. The requested rezoning that has been submitted as an administrative matter to the Justice Department is still under review. But there has been a subsequent development which I need to share with the board and the public, and that is on November 12th, Judge Madeline Hakala had a status conference with representatives of the Justice Department, Jefferson County, and me on behalf of Hoover to review what needs to be done to determine if Jefferson County and Hoover are ripe for a determination of unitary status. Hoover and all of the city school systems that were subject to the Linda Stout 1970 order have been subject to the jurisdiction of the federal court since that time. Approximately 12 years ago, the United States Supreme Court issued an opinion in a case called Freeman versus Pitts, stating that it was time for the federal courts to begin the process to cease oversight of public school systems. That desegregation review had taken long enough that it's time for the courts to see if there's any remaining vestiges of desegregation. The Hoover system has never operated a segregated school system, but because it was subject to the Stout order, it is subject to a review by the federal court to determine if it's ripe for a determination of unitary status. One of the aspects of that review relates to the student assignment, which is essentially student attendance zones. And so Judge Hakala has asked for a number of documents relating to that issue and to the other 6 areas that you will be reviewing with the proposed status conference in February of the parties. We are in the last stages of preparing all of the data that she has requested as part of her review under the unitary status. That's an overview. If you don't mind, let me share with you the statement that I prepared to John Anderson when he inquired about this matter on November 24th. Judge Madeline Hakala order memorializes her intent to implement the order of the United States Supreme Court in Freeman versus Pitts. The Freeman versus Pitt decision directed federal courts to cease federal supervision of public schools when they had achieved unitary status by eliminating all vestiges of prior desegregation. With the retirement of federal Judge Inga Johnson, Judge Hakala has assumed responsibility for the Stout versus Jefferson County desegregation case. The Hoover school system and Jefferson County school systems were the focus of her conference on November 12, 2014. In order to evaluate whether the vestiges of prior desegregation have been eliminated to the extent practical, the court must examine 6 facets of the school operation: student assignment, faculty assignment, staff assignment, facilities and resources, transportation, and extracurricular activities. Judge Hakala, in her order, requires the Hoover school system to submit information on each of these facets to give her a database to determine what, if any, additional steps Hoover must take to achieve unitary status. The United States Justice Department will be an active participant in this process. Achieving unitary status requires careful analysis of the data and often takes several years in order to satisfy the court that the district has satisfactorily removed all vestiges of prior desegregation in all 6 areas. Hoover never operated a dual school system but remained the subject to federal oversight as a system formerly with the Jefferson County school system. In my conversation with Natalie Singletary today, she confirmed that she had all of the information that she requested prior to November 4th. She acknowledged that our current petition for rezoning would be subsumed to some extent in the review of Judge Hakala as part of the review to see if we have achieved unitary status. The court can determine whether we are unitary in all of the 6 factors or in some but not all, and enter an order accordingly. It's my impression that Judge Hakala wants to move forward expeditiously with this matter and stress the importance of the districts submitting all of the data that she requested as a result of her November 12th meeting. So it's under review with the Justice Department and will be under review by Judge Hakala, which was the process we would have had to follow anyway.
Donald, real quickly, as a matter of clarification and probably editorial correction, this was not an investigation by Judge Hakala. This is not an investigation by the Justice Department. It's simply an inquiry to try to get this unitary status established for Jefferson County and Hoover.
That is correct. She assumed the responsibility when she was assigned this case this year. She reviewed the docket sheet. She determined that it needed to be reviewed for unitary status, and she set up this meeting.
So the presumption anybody might have that this was an investigation is absolutely unfounded.
That would not be correct. It was her review based on her responsibility under the Supreme Court decision of Freeman versus Pitts. And she's doing the same thing for Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Thank you very much. Mr. Perry, do you have anything? Okay. If there's not, if we don't have any more information reports, again, Mr. Sweeney, thank you for that information.
Madam President?
Yes.
May I say something?
Sure.
A few weeks ago, Dr. Dodson and Mr. Phillips, who I see is in the room over here, were kind enough to meet with Ms. Lee Tillman. Has a vast amount of knowledge with virtual classrooms. She spoke at one of our meetings a couple of months ago. Just to let you know, it is amazing what is out there. And we're going to continue to listen to Ms. Tillman. She's volunteered. She doesn't work for this system. She's raising her children. But there's some resources out there I think is very important for us to listen to and see what's out there. And Mr. Phillips and Dr. Dodson are listening. And we'll give you a report on that coming up another day.
Thank you. Anything else under information reports? John Lyda, saw you come in. Thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Is there any other councilman here? We have a lot of people. Okay. If not, let's move into new business. Let me start. There's a letter that I want to read to you. It's dated December the 5th, 2014. It's addressed to Donna Frazier, President of the Hoover City Board of Education. I'm gonna get through this. Would you read that, please?
Dear Ms. Frazier, as you know, I've been asked by Dr. Bice to assist in leading the challenges that face public education in the state of Alabama, and have agreed to do so beginning January 1st, 2015. Accordingly, I respectfully tendered my resignation as superintendent of Hoover City Schools effective at midnight on December 31st, 2014. I do so with profound gratitude to the Department Board of Education, staff, community, those values, principles, dedication have meant so much to me, and more importantly, to the students who are served by Hoover Schools. I look forward to applying the same standards of stewardship and steadfastness of the purpose that I've guided in Hoover and the service of Alabama entire K-12 family. I thank you again for the opportunity to have played a part in public education's the sad stories that continue to be written within the city of Hoover. Please let me know if and how I might be assistance of the board facilitating transitions in its next superintendent. Very truly yours, Andy Craig.
Thank you. Maybe y'all want to say thank you.
Were you the only one that didn't outlast? That's great. Remind me quite often that you weren't the one that I wasn't the one that she voted for, but we worked together a long time, and as the letter states, it's been nothing but a privilege for me to be in Hoover, to have my family in Hoover, to raise our family in Hoover, my kids to be in our schools. I've had the tremendous good fortune to work with amazing people, and to me that's what it gets back to, and many of those folks are in this room. You know, when we talk about the faculty and staff, I could just go on and on about the relationships that have been important to me over the years, and I'm very proud to have had a little bit to do with bringing the folks here that are here, with keeping some of the folks here that are here, and again, it's been an amazing time, an incredibly rewarding time for me, my family, working with folks on the Board of Education. It's just a time in my life that never ever forget. I've certainly grown and learned, and I hope we've grown and learned together along the way. At this point, I am looking forward to learning and growing in a little bit different direction. But Hoover is a very, very special place to me. The folks that I had the opportunity to work with along the way are very, very special to me. And I'm gonna miss you guys. I miss you guys. And I've said enough. And the SROs, I don't know if y'all are here for protection. The SRO program in this school system is second to none. Faculty and staff in the system are second to none. A lot of the things are just here. I never forget when I came here, that the things that were already here. And community expectations is one of those. And I see parents in the room. Parents in this community come to the table with very high expectations, and that's something that you see the system try to create, and it's here. It's always been here, and it's a very, very healthy component, I think, of what makes this system great and this community great. So, still going to be here. I'm going to very much miss the day-to-day. But it's just been an incredibly rewarding time for me personally to be part of the Hoover success story. So I want to thank you, thank the Board of Education, and the community as a whole.
Thank you.
We show Mr. Craig our appreciation for
I do want to make one comment. Mr. Craig will play a very important role down the state. And he takes with him over 13 years of K-12 experience, which will help us out. We have an ally down in Montgomery. So I appreciate that, and I'll still be calling her harassing you, so please don't change yourself.
Don't stop.
I apologize, it's just this grandmother, I guess, in me. I'm getting a little bit emotional. I apologize. Okay, Andy, just be patient with us as we get through this next phase of it. The next thing, I guess, is replacing Mr. Craig in an interim position. That is the task at hand for the school board presently. And as Mr. Craig, as Mr. Murphy read in Mr. Craig's resignation, it's effective midnight, December 31st, 2014. So the board will be tasked with finding an interim superintendent in place. We need to have someone in place by January the 1st, 2015. An interim superintendent can serve a maximum of 180 days. And I have asked the board members to list their top 5 priorities regarding an interim superintendent and to be prepared to discuss this publicly at the meeting tonight. As board president, I'll give you my top 5, not in any order, but again, as I've stated to the press on several occasions the last couple of weeks, we could not begin this process until we had Mr. Craig's resignation, which we received late Friday afternoon. So it's time to begin the dialogue and start the process. As board president, these are 5 things that are important to me, again, as an interim superintendent. And right now, again, the interim is the position that needs to be filled, but we are focused on a permanent superintendent. I want everyone to understand that. That is first and foremost. As soon as the interim superintendent is hired, the process for the permanent position will begin immediately. As board president, it's my goal, I've not necessarily discussed this with the other board members, but it's my goal to have a superintendent, a permanent superintendent in place by the end of this school year. Let me list my top 5, and then Mr. Kelly, we'll start with you and just go down the list. First and foremost, interim must make decisions in the best interest of all Hoover City School students. The interim must be respectful of all Hoover City School employees while working with us. Interim must be ready to take the position beginning January 1st, 2015. Interim must not be interested in applying for the permanent superintendent position. An interim must have served in a superintendent's role. Again, those are my 5 top priorities. Mr. Kelly, if you'll list yours, please.
Madam President, of course, there's a couple of lined up that have to be similar. I think it's very important that interim superintendents understand the diversity opportunities that we have in our district. We talked about it earlier with rezoning. We have laws to comply with. So that's got to be understood. But along with that, to have a superintendent that has worked with the school system similar to our size. I don't mean it's got to be this large. We're the 7th largest city in the state, I believe that's correct. In other words, be familiar with dealing with as many employees as we have, staff that we have. Also understand the communication required to work with the board, to work with the staff that's here. Ms. Frazier will probably explain, at least I'll explain my reasons for possibly looking at someone outside this district. From what I can see and what I read, what I understand, what I see in going to AASD meetings, our staff is extremely capable, talented, and does an outstanding job currently and has so in the past. My opinion is that maybe we look outside, Madam President, possibly, and that is based on some of what I have here, so that we don't disrupt the success and the momentum we have going in this district. Strategic plans are important. They're in place now. The interim superintendent will need to understand that and to keep that in place as we go forward to get into a full-time superintendent. It would be nice, it would be designed to have a PhD in this position, but not required. I barely have a college education, so hopefully that's not required, but there's a lot of resources out there that have advanced education degrees. If possible, I think we should look at that, not make it a requirement, but look at that and start out. Like I said, Madam President, you've already listed 2 that I happen to have on there, so we haven't met and discussed this. We were very fortunate this last weekend. The annual conference with the Alabama Association of School Boards just concluded. Part of the training in there goes over these instances and what the resources may be available to us. And we have some very talented people in the state of Alabama that I would love to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper?
The criteria for me, I'm not looking for somebody necessarily who's going to make hardcore decisions in the next 6 months, because that's 180 days the limit. We're looking for somebody. I'm looking for somebody with knowledge, skills, and demonstrated ability. Typically, you'll find this in a lot of retired people. I think it's healthy to go outside the district. We have a lot of qualified people in the district, but all these people are serving very critical roles. And if you pull them out of that role midstream in the school year, it's not going to be it's going to potentially be disruptive. So I think an outside person would be helpful. I think an outside-in look at who the school district would be also helpful, because that person, again, based on knowledge, skills, and ability, and that outside look based upon their previous experience, will help us find the best available superintendent to fill the permanent position going forward in July. Of course, the timeline is critical, as Donna indicated. There's also, I think in the 4 criteria, I think you alluded to, I don't think it would be in the best interest of us to have somebody come in to an interim position who's looking to get the permanent position, because you just don't know what you'll get in the short term. Let me just stop.
Thank you. Mr. President?
I'll follow right in line with Mr. Cooper in saying that I feel the interim needs to be somebody that is just that, an interim. I don't think we will have the opportunity to have as good a candidate pool if some of the candidates that are out there may think that the interim is a potential permanent superintendent. Differing a little bit from Mr. Kelly, I think he needs to have a PhD. I also think he needs to have been an ex-superintendent somewhere. in a system that has a lot of the demographics that we have in Hoover, as well as the size. It'd be wonderful, but he is somewhat familiar with our system. That's all.
Mr. President, one thing I do agree, we would like to confuse, just want to make it clear though, so that's saying required. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
Keep from being redundant, I think we share same points as far as the superintendent. I will only expand on prior conversation, presentation Mr. Sweeney just recently gave about DOJ. We only have 180 days to make this decision. That doesn't necessarily mean this person, he or she, will be in place by May. They can very well be in place by March. I don't know how long it takes to get feedback from the DOJ during this period of time. Maybe longer than May, maybe going into next year. I don't know that. But I would rather for the new leader, permanent leader coming in, not the interim, to make those decisions in regards to the things that are on the table. Because in the event that they come in, we may vote on something that they may end up changing later down the road, so is no stability with that. That's my only concern with that. But again, I go back when it's the 180 days, we may very well pick somebody by May or by March. So that's the only thing I'm looking for. And there's no definite on when we're gonna have a permanent answer. Maybe it isn't even next year. So we gotta look at those things. But again, I echo the remaining fellow board members.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sweeney, I have just written some notes through the superintendent search in the past, but I want to handle things a little bit differently this time. So I guess you can tell me what I can and cannot do. One thing that I want to ask if I can do this, obviously, if you'll begin drafting a temporary employment contract for the interim, which will require the board's approval, obviously. If you'll do that for us, I would appreciate it. Really and truly, guys, we only have about 3 weeks. We're very time sensitive in our selection process. Is it appropriate for me to appoint someone on the board, and Mr. Cooper is who I had in mind, and I mentioned Mr. Cooper because of his tenure on the board, his length of time on the board. And Mr. Cooper, before you say yes or no, hold on 1 second. Can he take our priorities, and can Mr. Cooper, I know AASB has approached me and offered to help in any way that they possibly can. Can he contact AASB? I know that as board members, we're already receiving emails from interested individuals. As board president, can I designate him a contact person? In other words, can he, if he has time and if you're willing to do so, take these priorities that we have listed and then bring a number of candidates? And when I say a number of candidates, obviously we're going to have an executive or a call board meeting before the end of the school year, or for the end of before Christmas break or during Christmas break or whatever, before the end of December 2014. Can Mr. Cooper be that person? And I guess as a board, we need to decide, is it 2 candidates or is it 3 candidates? And again, I'm talking just about the interim superintendent position right now. We're not even going to discuss the permanent position until we get an interim in place. So please follow through with me. When I say I'm talking about a superintendent, I'm talking about the interim. Can he bring a number of candidates to the board? And for instance, are y'all thinking 2 candidates, 3 candidates? Are these names going to have to be made public? If Mr. Cooper's willing to do this, let's say there's 2 people, there's 3 people. that he brings to the board for our consideration. Are those 2, 3 names public? Will interviews have to be public? We just didn't do it like this back in 2007. That's the reason I'm asking. I want to do things differently than we did. Not right or wrong, I just want to do things a little bit differently this time. So what can we do as a board when we are 3 weeks away from really needing an interim, a leader in Hoover City Schools?
First of all, that's well within your prerogative to assign that responsibility to someone. It's been done very successfully and satisfactorily with other school districts to do that. It has the advantage of expedition because if you assign a committee of more than one person, then before such a committee has to meet or can meet, there must be a posting of any meeting or discussion or any effort that they undertake to obtain information. So assigning one person to gather information and come back to the board to share that information with no responsibility other than to gather information, I think is a very appropriate strategy, and has worked very well with other systems that I've been involved in doing just that. Whatever names Mr. Cooper would bring back for your consideration would have to be public.
Would the interviews have to be public?
You do not have to interview for an interim superintendent's position.
Okay.
There's no statutory requirement to do that. You do have to interview for the permanent. Correct. As you're well aware, but not for the interim.
Okay, Mr. Cooper? Do you have the time
Let me just,
to?
let me all the process for everyone's consideration before I jump in here.
Okay.
We just heard a lot of criteria from each individual about what you would like to see and you think is appropriate for an interim superintendent. I think the first thing is to take everybody's input again and try to distill it down. Let's give us some definitive criteria that everyone agrees upon. And once you've got these criteria, I clearly don't know all the possible candidates on statewide or regional wide basis who might be interested in this position. So clearly we're going to have to go solicit some help. The Association of School Boards is probably the best entity to do that. So with that criteria, we can solicit their help to getting these names. And then we can match the criteria with the names and try to go at from that angle. And the number of people that, or number of names that we'll be able to bring back to the board will just be dependent upon how they match up with the criteria we all felt was important.
Let me ask you this, to the board as a whole. 2 candidates, 3 candidates, I mean, keep in mind, as Mr. Sweeney just pointed out, these names will be public, so we can't have 10 names.
Right.
When we went through the superintendent search before, the permanent candidate, there were 3 that were brought to us at the very end, and all 3 of those names were obviously made public. So keep in mind, someone may be a bit hesitant knowing that their name is going to be public. So we need to give a realistic number. 2 people, 3 people.
Let me just say this one thing, you know, whoever you're soliciting, I don't know what their plans are now for holidays. So really, you're only looking at 2 weeks. Because you got the 8th through 12th, the following week, and the next week is Christmas, and the following 3 or 4 days is New Year's. So realistically, you have 2 weeks to make this happen.
I would suggest that that's an important goal to have interims in place by January 1. But the railroad's not going to stop running if you run into unexpected issues and have to delay that a week or 2 weeks. You're not going to be in jeopardy of anything. There's not likely to be any major decision the first 2 weeks of January that at least I know about. So I just throw that out. Timing is critical, but I would cut yourself enough slack to make sure that you get the person that you're most comfortable with.
There's one aspect that nobody's really addressed, and that is the fact that you can find someone perhaps who meets the criteria and you're comfortable with, but that person's got to be acceptable to whatever financial compensation we're willing to make. I don't know, you were in the previous decision on Andy, and we had a guy come in who wanted $250+ million plus you name it. And so there's a sense of reasonableness and acceptance that we gotta all come to grips with too, is whatever that is. So that's another facet we have to look at.
Well, and that's the reason I asked Mr. Sweeney if he would go ahead and start, constructing the.
And there are some standards of reference. EEP is just an excellent resource. We have gone through interim process with other systems and will know the types of salary for comparable school systems. In addition, the State Board of Education has a pool of retired superintendents that are often assigned to various school districts that is a resource that has been very valuable to systems in the state. So the State Department would have information about what's comparable, what's realistic in terms of salary, and so forth. So I think you're going to have some comparatives that will be real beneficial.
Mr. Sweeney, if Mr. Cooper comes back, say I submit a name and my fellow board members do, and he gets these names, how can we recognize OMA and still be able to discuss it as a board, which I think the answer is a public meeting, but at what point can we talk about whatever names, 2 or 4 or whatever, how do we do that?
I think that has to be in a public meeting. I shouldn't say I think. That needs to be in a public meeting because that goes beyond just the gathering of information and becomes a sorting process that's a decision making. So at that point you're deliberating about something, and I think that has to be a matter that's openly discussed. So the open meeting law does inhibit that process. I was going to share one other.
Well, if I have 2 names that I personally vet and would really like to submit those names, I would give Mr. Cooper, of course, with no comment. And then at some point we're going to have a public meeting because I would think we may disagree. Once we get to the point we think the person would talk to us and will leave his current position or come out of retirement, whatever it is, then we would, I guess, just have to have an open meeting, which is fine.
In a fairly recent situation, the sorting process really distilled the candidates to a minimal number. The candidates that were brought to the attention of, say, Earl Cooper would be asked, what would, number 1, are you interested? Number 2, what would be the salary that you would expect? And 3, how soon could you start? Well, those requirements will distill a number out of consideration. So I think there's not going to be that many people that will really be available that soon that have the kind of experience and background that y'all described it tonight.
Thank you.
Even though you said there's no interview process for the interim superintendent, at a board table, is that not discussing good human character? Because we've got 3 or 4 names on we're gonna have, and what if Mr. Kelly has a candidate that he likes, and I have one that I like, and I'm like, well, I don't like your candidate, and I'll tell you why I don't like your candidate. I mean, is that not good name and character?
It can be, but you have to be awfully careful. Competence, experience, those kinds of things are more related to credentials than they are good name and character.
Okay.
So there's a gray area and an overlap of those, but I think in this process we should be exceedingly careful about meeting in executive session to discuss matters that could arguably be competence and experience, which wouldn't be good name and character.
Okay. Mr. Cooper, are you interested? you have the time? Okay.
And one other possibility, it would require more than one meeting, but Mr. Cooper could gather information and say, I now have information about what people would want in terms of the salary range. One person wants $100,000, another wants $2,000 a month. Provide options like that to the board at a meeting that will narrow the field even more. And so then you give Mr. Cooper guidance on those kind of parameters, and that helps him narrow the process, go back to the candidates and see if that narrows it down to one or two. And then you ask those one or two people, we're seriously considering you if you're nominated for consideration with the board. Do you understand that it will be a public disclosure and a public discussion? And if they agree to that, then Mr. Cooper can make those recommendations to you with the resumes and criteria that he's worked out with you.
Okay. So do you have the time and you are willing to do this? Okay. And Mr. Cooper, it's important to me that you work, maybe I know you're winding down, but it's important to me that you're involved in this interim. I mean, who better to fill your position? I just feel like that, for me personally, it's important that Amy is involved in this, so that if it's duties that an interim wants to talk about or whatever, are you willing to? Okay.
I agree. Do I get a stipend with that?
Okay, so,
and Ms. Fraser,
yes,
I
sir.
commend you for raising this topic in this manner at this meeting so that everybody here knows what you have in mind for you to structure it in a way that's going to be very beneficial as you go through the process. I commend you for the leadership you've shown on this important task, even though it's an interim issue.
Thank you.
My only concern I would have is having a void in leadership. We're not having anybody in place. I know we got to do our due diligence and do everything we need to do, but I would hate to have a void for a long period of time if that comes about. Because anything can happen.
I don't think we will.
Okay.
I can't imagine, and as Mr. Sweeney pointed out, we're not gonna have people beating the doors down for an interim position. I mean, you think about, we've gotta have someone that's ready to start January 1. I mean, they've gotta make a decision, he or she, immediately. Do you see what I'm saying? I just can't imagine there being any great length of time that we're gonna be, without a leader. I mean, do y'all agree, or? I mean, it's gonna take a special person that's willing to do this.
It's going to be up to them, whether or not they want to do this.
Exactly.
Whoever them is.
Right. Can we go ahead, and schedule a call board meeting tonight? To give you some kind of deadline, Mr. Cooper?
I'm busy the 24th and 25th.
I'm gonna get into your holidays sometimes. Please, we put a calendar up here and see, just a week before. Never mind, she's got.
You got next week or Monday or Tuesday? Not the 19th.
What day is that?
That's a Friday.
Friday.
Okay, that's all available that everyone has.
And you got next week, or you got the 22nd or 23rd?
Okay,
15th.
okay, who's available on the 19th?
My schedule just cleared.
Mr. Cooper?
As late as we can do.
Yeah, I've got them.
Okay, do y'all wanna do a December 19th, Friday night, 5:30 call board meeting?
Perfect.
Thank you, that's the correct answer.
That's a pepperoni for me.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Sweeney, you feel like that it's not possible if Mr. Cooper comes to the December 19th meeting with, okay, guys, 2, 3, 4 candidates, come on. Let's take it. How many? Their names are gonna be public, so, I mean, we've got to keep it minimal. I don't want to scare people away.
Well, first of all, if that meeting is dedicated to that conversation, then I think that's enough time. I believe, again, as we got what board member brought it up, we have a lot of talented folk, and the show will continue to run on. It's an interim spot, may last 2 months. I mean, the more folks we put on there, the longer this process is gonna take.
Given the requirements and the profile that you're expecting, I'd be astounded if you have more than 2, and I'd really be surprised if you have more than 1 that's gonna meet all of these strict standards that you're looking at. So I just throw that out based on availability at this time of year and the challenge of managing a system of this size with the requirements you're looking at. I don't think numbers are going to be as important as getting a person that meets all the criteria.
So I haven't done this before, obviously, Mr. Sweeney, probably many times. 2 candidates, do you think is fair?
I'd leave that up to Mr. Cooper and what he finds out.
Okay. Are y'all okay with that?
Yeah. Good,
I think my sense of why you're asking that is that you want to make sure that if Mr. Cooper comes up with more than 2 people that are very competitive, that those people are presented to y'all for consideration.
Okay.
In other words, you're not asking him to make the determination, you're asking him to gather information.
Correct.
So I think, knowing Mr. Cooper's sensitivity to the process, I'm sure he's aware of that, if there's more than 1 person, he's gonna bring it to the board to make that response, to make that decision.
Okay. All right, so December the 19th, 5:30, will be our next call board meeting. So my question, I'm gonna ask this one more time. Do you think on December 19th, Mr. Cooper brings 2 names to us, 4 names to us? Is it possible for us to be able to make a decision on December the 19th? Or do we need another board meeting?
And if he just brings 1 person, I think it's possible for you to make a decision that night, or the board can say, we'd like to consider others, or have more time. I think this is your process.
Okay. Do y'all want to just leave it December 19th and be open-minded about this, and may possibly be able to hire an interim superintendent on the 19th? If not, we'll schedule another meeting. Is that fair enough? Okay. Andrew, are you available on December the 19th out there? Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else on the interim superintendent process? Any other new business? If not, do we have any public participation tonight? Robin?
My name is Robin Schultz. I live in Hoover. A couple things that I'd like to point out in the discussion that you had a few minutes ago. And I want to open with you not being able to read the letter from Mr. Craig. You choked up on it. You choked up on it, and what's ironic about it is that Mr. Craig was an interim superintendent and then became a permanent superintendent. And the interesting thing about that is one of your qualifications was that this person who was an interim not seek the job of permanent. But you choking up on the letter indicated to me, and maybe to others, that you approved of the job that Mr. Craig did. So I hope that that doesn't become something that you look at on in looking at the interim. Obviously, he did a good job in your eyes. Okay? He was an interim before he became the permanent. So I'd like to point that out. Second thing was you asking the 5 board members what they were looking for. Keep in mind, all these people right here are not here because they have nothing better to do on a Monday afternoon.
What did I say at the very beginning, Robin? Our focus is on the permanent superintendent.
Yes, ma'am.
And the entire community, all stakeholders. I've been through this process before, and you know I have.
Yes, ma'am.
All stakeholders will be involved with the permanent superintendent.
Thank you.
And we've got 3 weeks to hire an interim superintendent.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay?
And I understand that.
Okay.
And the difference between 2007 and 2014, lots of things have changed. And
That's
again,
correct.
we are now in an age where the stakeholders can have a voice. And I hope that in the permanent position, which you have 180 days, but of those 180 days, you're going to be only involved in 5 months of those 180.
Correct.
Hopefully that a decision will be made prior to your departure, if you choose to depart. I don't think. And so I'd like that to be brought in there as well. And I do hope that although you've narrowed it down to, you've given your choices. You all received my letter, and that I sent on November the 14th. And keep in mind that some people that are here already have an outstanding view of the school system as it is right now. Not only for interim, but also for permanent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Dan Fulton. I live in Bluff Park. I was just going to comment on the interim superintendent. If you're going to go outside the system, I agree with Mr. Sweeney. You're going to have to really, I think, rely on the School Board Association and the State Board of Education to maybe find you a retiree or someone from the State Board who can come in and serve on an interim basis. I do think there are maybe some people in the system who might be able to do it. A lot of good candidates right here in the system as an interim. But again, if you're going to go outside, I think it would really need, given the very limited amount of time that there is, that I think, the State Board of Education and the School Board Association will both be more than happy to, give you all the assistance that you need. I work with some of the retirees associate groups, and there are quite a good number of retirees who are very, very capable. I want to just say something I said at the City Council meeting last week. I called on the council and the mayor to contact the University of Alabama in Birmingham and encourage them to continue the football program as it is now with the USA Conference USA. Continue it, at least for now. I think that's a tremendous resource to the Hoover schools and all the schools in the area, and to Hoover. As I pointed out, I gather they were going to have a basketball tournament in Birmingham for the conference. That may be in jeopardy now. That would bring a lot of business into Hoover in the hospitality industry, shopping, and so forth. And I think that's a big loss, and I think that's just been a big resource to the Hoover schools and to our community. And so I would encourage everyone here and the board members and the superintendent to contact the president of the University of Alabama in Birmingham and all the members of the trustees of the University of Alabama and ask them to explore every avenue possible to try to continue the University of Alabama in Birmingham football program. Mr. Murphy participated in that program 4 years, I believe, wasn't it, Mr. Murphy?
2.
And he finished at UAB, and I think you can attest to how valuable that program is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joey Murray. I live in 97 Maple Trace. And I have 4 beautiful daughters, 2 of which are in the Trace Crossing Elementary system. And tonight, I just have a few kind of comments. I am concerned. I'm a concerned parent tonight. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but more importantly, not just specifically for Trace Crossings Elementary, but also for our district as a whole. And there's a couple of things. One, I'm going to ask for some urgent action by the board. And by the way, thank you, Mr. Craig, for your service. We will certainly miss you and appreciate your friendship. I didn't want to miss that. So I'm going to ask for some urgent action, but I'm also going to ask you a couple of questions. One is actually a clarification, too, of something that's been said tonight. So I'll get to that in a minute. But the first thing is an urgent request to do anything in our power to continue the rezoning request that has been placed at the Department of Justice at this point. Just from some of the comments tonight, it definitely sounds like that has been put on hold, and it's very convenient to kind of stall that out in light of the circumstances. But there's many reasons why this needs to be an important priority to the board. Okay, so number one, there's overcrowding at Deer Valley Elementary. I think that's very common knowledge, but I don't think that there's a proper answer to that problem unless the board has an answer for that. So I would ask you to consider that and to answer that question, particularly over the next couple of years. That's very important, and that was one of the aspects of the current plan that would be put in place. Number two, there's a vast disparity amongst the district in light of free and reduced lunch percentage, also kind of pointing to the poverty percentage within schools. We have, at Trace Crossings, we are hovering around the 50% mark and have been for the last couple of years. This is a problem because there are many schools within the district that are actually in single digits. This is not something that the Department of Justice, I think, would be in agreement with. There's a reason that they track that variable within our education system, and that needs to be dealt with. It does not need to be overlooked, because I think that that puts us at risk. So that's the second thing. And I also believe, I will speak specifically to Trace Crossings, we have many concerned parents that, in light of rezoning not taking place, will in fact pull their kids from the system. That will only heighten and increase that percentage, which will only make us more subject to scrutiny. So that's another key factor. And this is a deadline. This is the year that this needs to take place in light of that. Number three, fiscal responsibility in the district is another important issue. It's been very common knowledge about that, and I think in the media. And so, you know, what some people are actually calling for new schools to be built and things of this nature, which is totally ludicrous. We have all the resources that we need if they're being properly used. Particularly Trace Crossings is at about 50% capacity, and that was another key aspect of the rezoning plan that was going to be able to take advantage of that. And then the fourth thing, in terms of the urgency, is that we have provided essentially all the information to the Department of Justice that would give all of our data to them at this point. With that data, if the Department of Justice does see that we have certain inconsistencies or issues that they would deem appropriate, they could very well act swiftly with lawsuits similar to what we've seen in Huntsville for inaction on our part. So I think we have a responsibility, knowing what we know, to actually follow through and to make this happen, or we leave ourselves up to scrutiny and potential lawsuits. That's a real concern that I think everybody needs to be aware of. So while I think it's very easy to table this in light of a changing of the guard, so to speak, you as the board, and this is where a point of question or clarification, I'm not sure, Donna, if you want to answer, or Mr. Sweeney, but it's my understanding that the board can actually move forward with an approval of the current plan that Mr. Craig has set forth without having an official rubber stamp approval by the Department of Justice. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's my assumption. So I'd love for Ms. Frazier or Mr. Sweeney if you could answer that.
That is possible and not something that I would recommend, because if we go forward without the Justice Department's input, the Justice Department would likely say to the court that more time is needed for whatever reason they provide. It's been my experience that the Justice Department is sensitive to the needs of the community, has no intention of delaying this unnecessarily, and given the dialogue that took place with Judge Hackala at the November 12th meeting, she has no intention of delaying this unnecessarily. And regardless of anything that the board might do, and the board has never given me any indication that they want to take any aspect of these important issues off the table. But independent of that, it's before Judge Hackala. And she's not going to let these matters go any longer without scrutinizing them because of the Freeman versus Pitt Supreme Court decision. So I think this is going to move forward. I have no reason to think that it's not going to move forward. And I didn't outline this in my response earlier to Ms. Frazier, but the process is not different. Justice Department is reviewing the data, and then we have the responsibility after that dialogue took place to petition Judge Hackala to review it. We're in the same posture now, but for a slightly different legal reason. Judge Hackala has asked us to submit information because of the Supreme Court decision, which is coincidental with what we're doing, but to the same end. So,
unrelated but related, basically.
I think that's well stated, better stated.
Well, then the only thing I want to make clear is, because there have been, you never said that we're delaying it, but there have been several comments that have lent to that. And I want to make very clear, at least from a public participation standpoint for what it's worth, that specifically the parents at Trace Crossings feel that this is a very urgent issue and should not be treaded on lightly or pushed off in any way, shape, or form. And by all means, a February date would be pretty much our drop-dead date for something like this in order to properly communicate to the community any changes that would take place as a result. So I'm imploring you to act at this point.
I would share in further response that Carol Barber has emphasized to me and to Mr. Craig and maybe to board members just how important this matter is to you parents and just how respectful she is about the way that you're proceeding to have a dialogue, a civil, respectful dialogue about these important matters.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public participation tonight? John? No, you sure?
Yeah.
I'm Mandy Solomon. I have children at South Shades Crest. First off, let me say that in the research I've done, there's actually only one elementary school in the school system in single digits for free
and reduced lunches, and that is Greystone. Secondly, Trace Crossings is a great school. I mean, I have friends who have kids there. I have a friend who works there. It's a great school. So my question is if this rezoning does not go through immediately, why would you pull your kids out if it's such a great school? Secondly, most of you know, I don't agree with everything the board does, but I do have to agree that, and I understand the importance of the rezoning because my school will be affected too, but we can't do this with an interim superintendent. And we have no clue when we're going to have a permanent superintendent, and it needs to be done under a permanent. An interim is, you know, they're not going to be here in the long term to deal with the possible, I guess, side effects or the long-term issues that come with rezoning. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. John?
Good evening. I'm John Lyda. I reside at 3484 Tamassee Lane. I come, Mr. Craig, just to say thank you. On behalf of my colleagues, although I didn't seek their permission, I'm confident that they were here, they too would stand with me just to offer our appreciation from City Hall for the leadership that you've given to the school system, which I think everyone in this room would certainly agree is one of the most important factors that keeps the long-term viability and the success of our city. And also, perhaps you've seen the banners around town. We were recently named by USA Today as a top 30 city to live in. And I think that is due in very large part to the school system and the success we enjoy. And I attribute much of that to your leadership, Mr. Craig. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyda. Anyone else tonight? I appreciate your patience and as we go through this process, and like I said, in January, we will further discuss the permanent position, and all stakeholders will be involved, I can assure you. All stakeholders were involved before. I'll tell this short story, very, very short, just because I can. Mr. Craig was not my pick for superintendent. You're right, Robin. He was not my pick. Susie Baker and I.
Gotta say it one more time.
I'm gonna say it. Just because I think I'm free. Susie Baker and I served together on the board at the time, and we served with 3 other people that had a different plan for Hoover City Schools. And I remember a conversation with one of my board members that said, he said to me, you know what, Donna, this is not about you, and this is not about what you want. This is about Hoover City Schools and what's best for the kids. Robin, I got on board with Mr. Craig at that point, and I've never looked back. And I've never been sorry for the decision that I guess I was forced to make. So, anyway, Andy knows this, and he knows I repeat this quite often, but anyway, I wanted to say that. It's not about anybody here on this board. As much as these teachers and the administrators mean to this school district, if you notice, I started out with my list of priorities. It's about the kids first. And as long as we stay focused on the kids, this is a very attractive school district, very attractive. I've been in Hoover for 30+ years. My 28-year-old started Green Valley Elementary when she was 5 years old, and I've had 2 other daughters go through since then. It's a very, very special place. I'm very happy for Mr. Craig, a great opportunity for him, and he will help us get through this interim process, and who knows, we may have to call him in Montgomery whenever we get ready for the permanent. But please have faith in this school board to do the right thing, and just know that you're going to be a part of the process. We've just got to get an interim in. I'll say this again, our focus is not on an interim superintendent, it's on a permanent superintendent. And I think I speak for the board when I say that. This is my thoughts and my comments, but I think I speak for the board.
But I appreciate you all being here tonight. Is there anything else that anybody, before we go? If not, Mr. Sweeney has provided the board with a certificate of compliance in order for us to meet an executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passed. The time is
It's a very limited agenda, and I hope it will last less than 30 minutes with no action to be taken.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Happy holidays to everyone.